All right, welcome everyone to the month of May. We are exploring our theme of spring growth. So, talking a little bit more about the full bloom effect of our lives and how we can expand and feel a little bit more empowered in our day-to-day life. And this is an unfolding, and the blooming is kind of a little bit tricky, a little bit messy, a little vulnerable. And we'll bring back the idea that we left on last month about trusting the process. So I'm Amanda. I'm joined by Patrick and Megan, and we're excited to bring you this conversation about growth and expansion and empowerment. So, how are we feeling about this theme? Like, what does that mean about, like, what does like expansion look like? What does taking up space look like?
Mm. It can look like a lot of things. It can feel like a lot of things. Quite literally, feeling your limits, stretching beyond your limits, physical space, testing, experimenting with what you believe your limits are, what the stories of your limitations are, um, feeling new experiences, exposing yourself to new experiences in a way that your nervous system is okay with, that are safe, maybe even challenging the narrative or the definition of what safe means without totally opening yourself up to harm, just testing the limits.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's also like there's it's like a practice of authenticity of allowing yourself to really like be in your fullness and not need to like shy away or hide parts of you based on like what others might perceive or think. So there's a little bit of that in there too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah, and
like,
as you were sharing, Amanda, at the beginning there, I was thinking, like blooming, I think of like a flower blooming, and it's kind of that like, oh, here I am, I'm beautiful, I'm pretty, here are my petals, and um it's interesting to think of the other side of that of like, how is that vulnerable, right? Or how is that flower, like, yes, I'm here, but also taking up space. Obviously flower doesn't have the limiting belief of like, I shouldn't take up space. But it's just interesting kind of that other side where like trusting that process of like, yes, here I am in full bloom and lovely. And also then like, ooh, this could be a little scary or like, this is vulnerable.
yeah, it's like the flower is like I have it doesn't think about this, but it's like it has the right to exist, and so do we. So it's not apologizing for blooming next to, like an oak tree or whatever. It's reaching for the resources that it needs to grow and thrive. And it's not editing its presence for the sake of others.
Mm.
Yeah, on the contrary, it's opening itself up on purpose to be vulnerable. That's it is being attractive on purpose to bring other species in. Like we like to look at that or cut them, pick them. Sometimes cutting them or picking the flowers causes more flowers to bloom, drawing the pollinators in, drawing animals who eat the flora to come in. It's attracting because it's part of the ecosystem.
Mhm.
But without blooming, its true essence doesn't exist. I mean, that's what it does. That's what I took away from you saying trusting the process of like, yes, these sophisticated brains that we have led us to be the top of the, on the apex, but it also gets in our way. Whereas we can learn so much from all the other life around us of there's no thought in if I bloom this flower, is it gonna get eaten? There's no thought at all. It just does
Mhm.
the process and continues to thrive.
Yeah, so I'm curious to talk a little bit more about what that looks like for us humans, and kind
Mm-hmm.
of what might get in the way or why some of us might struggle with taking up space while others seem to not have a problem at all. That's just more of their natural way of being.
Megan, you had a pretty good example that we were talking about earlier that some people might be able to relate to.
Of a limiting belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sharing that growing up, my mom always told me that my colors were blue and like neutral tones to wear. So all my clothes were like blue and grays and kind of that like neutral palette. And then I couldn't wear red. Red was not my color. I think she had taken some like, I don't know, color assessment test or something back in the early 90s, and red was not my color. So I always believed like I can't wear red. So I didn't own anything red, never wore red. And then as I got a little older, found a red shirt that I really liked. And I'm like, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna do it. Mom didn't like it because red was still not my color, but I did it and I wore it and I liked it. It felt good. I kind of broke through that limit of I can't do this. This isn't good for me. To trying it on literally and feeling like, oh, this feels good for me. So I guess that's, kind of a maybe silly example, but of how something like that kind of in real life, how we can um yeah, kind of try something out, right? Expand to like, how does this feel to do? Does this feel safe? Does this feel good? Do I want to keep doing this? Yeah.
So you're getting
Yeah.
factual information rather than the story that someone else told you was true.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's sometimes like maybe people aren't growing up in environments where they have that positive reinforcement where they're like safe to explore or to experiment or to speak up, to play, to really like discover who they are. And some people might have a little bit more of that in their lives, so they're able to kind of grow up in that way where it's like they've just been their kind of natural, authentic selves. But it is a lot about that story that we end up, telling ourselves if we're told over and over again that this is not for us, and we believe that, it becomes, that narrative that we tell ourselves, and we can takes a little bit of work. It takes, like to rewire that and to start telling ourselves a different story, just to like, okay, I'm gonna wear the red shirt because I feel bold in it, or whatever, it feels, whatever it brings to you. And that can apply to so many different things in our lives.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was thinking that even just realizing for ourselves that it is a limiting belief that we've learned, right? That
Yeah.
it's not fact or that it's not true. Just thinking like, our families obviously shape a lot of that, our peers, our culture, our society, social media, lots of those things we learn. There's lots of just things we learn that like boys are this and girls are this, right? Where it's like, is that true? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think just kind of challenging those things for ourselves, and is that something that's holding you back or somehow, limiting you to where, oh, I don't have to conform to that or don't have to believe that. Is that true for me? And so I think even, yeah, realizing those things, which do you all have any thoughts on like some ways we can notice those for ourselves or kind of help to
Well,
challenge
yeah,
that?
I think before we get into the like to-dos, I just want to point out like the even if you can't relate to your specific example of a color, like I think it's good because we can expand that into it breaks it down into steps, right? You got factual information by feeling it out. Like you were checking in, like I think I want to. So when you were ready, you challenged the limit and you tried something on. This isn't like I've been told my whole life I can't be something or can't do something, and then you go on national television and broadcast it out. Like that's different, right? We have to take steps. Many of us, the practice is taking steps and constantly checking in with our nervous system with each step of like, is this safe? If it is, cool. Let me try it and get factual information. If it isn't, well, now we've got a new thing to challenge. Why? Why is it not safe? Is it because I've never tried it before? Is it because it's not like I'm at risk? I think it's getting factual information of, you know, you can't wear red is a pretty definitive limiting claim, right? Challenging that a little bit at a time can lead you to wear like bright neon pink or like whatever it is,
Not
it could
today.
not.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's like, being really intentional with your words, because I think words are very powerful, and again, coming back to that story is like, I can't wear this or I can't do this versus I choose not to do this. Like you have choice to do some of this, stuff, and it's pulling in like um building a relationship of trust within yourself so that you're practicing your integrity for yourself, for your life, and participating fully in your life, not based on this external messaging or anything that's coming from outside of yourself. That becomes then like an implanted story.
So what you're talking about actually is agency versus control, because control, an example of control would have been trying to convince your mom that red is actually an appropriate color. You're putting all your energy into someone else's belief system that they're implanting on you versus you exercising your agency to make a choice.
Mm.
Right, because I didn't need her mind to change. She can stick with forever that, nope, you don't look good in red. But I need to change for myself, which, right, spoiler alert, we can only control our own thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So
Mhm.
instead of, right, trying to control that of, okay, what do I want to do for me? Mhm.
That's
Instead
a
of
that's
one
a
red.
good point. Maybe we should talk about what agency actually is. I know with some of my clients, maybe there's a little apprehension of admitting that they don't know what agency is. And there's so much conflation between agency and control. Do either of you have thoughts on the difference?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like making the choices that you need to make for you, so you are staying in your integrity for yourself. Um, and that versus like trying to control what everyone around you is doing so that the choices that you're making are not in behalf of them, they're in behalf of you because this is your experience, right? Your reality. So it's being able to say, everyone's doing this thing, but I don't really want to do that. But should I do it to fit in, or should I do it to like to make sure that they like me, to where I'm not judged for not doing this thing? So it's about saying like I'm making this choice because this is in alignment with me, not because I'm trying to fit in with this group of people or whatever the situation is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
you're like, go ahead.
Oh, Patrick, I was just going to ask, do you have a way that you kind of sum that up for people or try to
Yeah. I mean,
distinguish
for
that?
my clients, I think it's often I talk about like your essence, your power. It's yours, right? So owning empowerment versus power, dominance, right? The belief that we have to uh, oppress or suppress or get in the way of other people in order for us to
Mhm.
rise. Um, it's not a popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it because it's true. Um, that's patriarchy. It doesn't matter who's doing it. All genders do it. All humans get exposed to it. This belief, and social media is not helping.
Mm.
This belief that it's power replacement theory. I have to now take power in order to make the change that's necessary. But what's missing is the realization that in order for you to take power, you're dominating. So you
Mm.
are also participating in the patriarchy, taking power from others so that you can have it. Intentions be damned, honestly. We see it so much, particularly in our politics. The things that people do and engage in order to enforce their agenda often look very different than what they originally intended because of the things that they've had to do. So for you to force something, I know we keep coming back to this example, but for you to force something on your mom, it's her opinion. She's entitled to her opinion. She can think whatever she wants, even though it's hurtful to you, perhaps. You aren't a victim to that hurt. And I think that's where we get stuck a lot of times is we take on other people's stories about us and we surrender our agency rather than taking ownership of it and being like, yes, I have my own essence, my power. I don't need to put any energy towards you at all. actually.
I think there's yeah, there's a lot of power in that. It's just like recognizing where your power lies within you and to be able to collaborate with the ecosystem that you're in rather than compete, right? So um it's acknowledging that you're growing in part of a whole, and it's not just like one person over another. And there's also like a natural perimeter, right? There's a natural perimeter that you can find when you're creating space for yourself and taking up space. And then there's also like you're not shrinking down because others are a little bit bigger or taller than you. You're allowing yourself to kind of say, nope, we're all reaching for the resources that we all need to thrive in this life, and we're not going to try to take from others or shrink away from others. And that's just kind of like acknowledging that it's our innate existence and to recognize our fullness and to be able to bloom in that fullness in all seasons of our lives, not just like um, speaking of social media, is just like showing like the extremes. Like this is the best my life is when I'm on vacation or when I'm celebrating stuff, and this is the worst my life is when something horrible happens or when we're enraged about something. So being able to be in the in between and still show up as your full self, and still allow people to see that, and that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability.
Yeah, I'll just name a real life example in this moment, how I could feel parts of me wanting to be irritated at whoever is using their blowers and lawnmowers because I chose this beautiful outside spot for us to have this conversation, but I chose to have this spot. And I think that's it, right? I would be surrendering my agency by giving it to whoever those people are who have a right to run their mower and blower whenever they want. It's inconveniencing me, but I think what we have to do is just be mindful, like, okay, I made a choice.
Mm,
You know, what that looks like in, for mental health, for instance, is depression, right? A lo- Unfortunately, a big component of it is waiting around to do something until we feel motivated to do it. And a lot of my clients are struggling with this. You know, we have to quite honestly force ourselves to do something in that state that we know we would normally enjoy or at least feel okay participating in.
mm,
Because if we wait around to feel motivated, we'll never do it. That's the crux of depression, right? So that's the exercise in agency. I'm making a choice to move to the very next step, not the 25th step. Because the 25th step will obviously feel unsafe from this vantage point. I've got to make all these steps in order for that one to feel more manageable.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that can apply even broader, like outside of depression, or just I'm thinking for myself of like laundry. I hate laundry. Like, I'm never going to be motivated to go fold the laundry. But right, that agency of like, okay, like, do I want to do this? Probably not, but do I need to? Or like, how do I make the next choice or kind of take the next step? And Patrick, your point too before, right, of like annoyance with the mowers or whatnot, and you made the choice to be there. I think also that empowerment of you can make a next choice, right? You can
Yes.
choose to move, you can choose to breathe and remind yourself you're in this beautiful outdoor setting. You can choose to press the mute button, like that, then okay, back to me, right? Like I get my next choice, and not kind of in that yeah, like I'm stuck or, like, yeah, that you have that empowerment. Mhm.
Yeah, and it's like that, it's having self-responsibility, right? So to say like, um, I can be annoyed forever about my laundry never being completely done, or I can say like, that's the choice that I'm making is to not, sit down and do it. I might not be motivated to do it, but do I want my space tidy? Okay, then I have to take responsibility to get to that point where I do want to be. And it's just kind of making yourself it's okay to be uncomfortable a little bit to get to the place where you feel, um, aligned, or where you are in a space of more like freedom, honestly. It's like being able to say like, oh, okay, now I don't have as much, like stuff nagging on me. And now I'm just like, oh, now I can actually like take up some space because I got rid of a little bit of this limitation or this clutter or whatever it is, this annoyance, because I'm taking responsibility for myself and my choices.
Yeah, which is what our spring theme has been, right? That like, what am I rooting in? What am I growing in? How do I, that uncomfortable change process and trusting the flow and the process of stuff. And then like, oh, okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Having to do a little bit of that uncomfortable growth to have the blooming, to kind of have the
Mhm.
dare, I don't know, reward kind of, right, of that. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of abuse this metaphor, um, that's also like the relevance of anxiety, stress, right? So if I give up, surrender my agency to make choices and next choices, brilliant point. Um, I am creating a new narrative about my safety. It might not seem like it in the moment. In the moment, I'm just like making a choice about mowers and whether I want to be here or not. But it's little micro information that keeps getting processed and processed, and it feeds whatever storyline that's playing in there. So we have to take that responsibility in order to rewrite the script, to rewrite the story, because what it could eventually turn into is I miss out on a lot of beautiful experiences because it'll probably just get interrupted by fill and play. And so I think that's what we have to do is that's also an unintended consequence of social media is and online dating and AI is perfectionism. If it's not perfect in my mind before I even start it, I won't start it because it's not safe. And I'm
Mm.
using air quotes because it may feel unsafe, but we don't actually know that in some situations, um, walking down a dark alley in an urban area at 3 a.m. by yourself, intoxicated, okay, objectively, that might be unsafe. But we don't know necessarily if being outside is going to get interrupted and that feels unsafe. We don't know that until we challenge it a little bit. And we also rob ourselves of beautiful experiences. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit with you know, again, it doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be like severe depression or paralyzing anxiety. These are little decisions that all of us make every single day that lead to a really complex and really strong underlying story about how we are complicit in our own disempowerment.
Mhm.
There are plenty of outside factors. I don't want that to be misinterpreted. There are plenty of folks and experiences and obstacles that can push us down. But that can't and shouldn't stop us from at least trying to share our voice. That's what I think expansion is about.
Yeah.
I'm going to voice, I'm going to be here, I'm going to share my voice. Other people might try to push it down a little bit. But if I just invent a story that they're going to, therefore I never exercise my voice, that's how I'm complicit.
Yeah, I think we have to like um, you know, stand up to our, the little shames, the big shames that come through that are, that might cause us or slash influence us to shrink ourselves down. And it's a kind of like remembering that we have a right to exist. We have a right to stand on the ground that we're standing on and to take up that space and to take our power back to say, like, I am in my reality. No one else is in my reality. Like, this is my time and I can own it the way that I want to own it by making these choices and not letting those little external, again, those external messages come through and kind of take us down to say, I don't know, whether someone's told us that we're too much or not enough, or, if we're afraid of being judged, or we're waiting for our turn to speak or to be seen, or if we're trying to be polite. So we have to kind of fight those tendencies sometimes that keep us small, or that, keep us in that more limiting space.
Mm. Yeah, and Amanda, as you're talking, that was making me think of before I kind of asked that question of like, how do we find those messages for ourselves that we've
Mm,
been told that, right, are in there, maybe we just don't know it. And I think the making practice for May is looking at affirmations, and that can be a good way to kind of check in with ourselves or listen to ourselves of like what maybe are some of those limiting beliefs. Because if you read an affirmation that's like, I'm lovable because I exist, and you're like, oh, like that doesn't feel right or that doesn't feel good,
mm,
that can be a good indication, right? Of like, oh,
yeah,
maybe there's been some message that like I need to earn love, right? Or, whatever that might be. But I think those can be little points, just kind of reading through the list of affirmations and those things to see kind of what ones you're like, yes, like connect with that. That feels so true to me. And other ones you'll notice just like kind of hit something inside. And so that can be kind of that point of like, okay, how do I want to challenge that? Do I want to challenge that? And what does it look like to expand myself, right? Or have some personal growth to kind of shift out of that.
yeah, and that's super good information to have too when you're reading something, you're like, ugh, when you get that little cringe. Cringe is information that
Right.
maybe should be
Hmm.
leaned into a little bit more. It's like that there's something to learn there. There's something that wants to come through. That's why it feels cringy, because it's like, ooh, we want to shut ourselves down to that because we don't want to let it out. But if we open ourselves up to it, maybe we can learn something, or even just release something. Like maybe there's something that just wants to like be aired out.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
an invitation to be curious about it, right?
Yeah.
Positive and negative, or pleasant and unpleasant, rather
Hmm.
than labeling it. You get to be curious about it. Because labeling, I think, um, that's part of the limitation that we put on
Yeah.
it, right? Sometimes we label it as, ooh, that's gross. I don't want anything to do with that. But now we don't actually lean in to challenge that narrative about
Mm,
ourselves. That's a really powerful experience of being like, ooh, I, I am innately valuable. Ooh, that doesn't feel right. Oof, what would it be like to
mm,
challenge that? Where does that come from? Whose voice is that? How old was I, or how old do I feel right now when I feel that yuck? And that can give us
mm.
some really good information about where that narrative comes from.
Yeah, that's a really good point to kind of look inward to see what version of you, or what, age of you felt that come through. Um, I think some of the other practices that we're going to do this month also are really good to experience that almost somatically. Like there's a lot of like kind of expansion, like physical expansion practices that can help us open up to that experience of um, like what are we holding within. And that helps us notice when we do feel that like ickiness, we kind of clam ourselves up a little bit. We're like, ooh, 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 everything kind of comes in, instead of, oh, we can actually like open and soften into this. And I think there's some good practices this month that'll help us explore that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do we want to give a little teasers about what those practices are? I know, Megan, you talked about affirmations. We're going to be exploring some affirmations. I'm going to be talking about feeling, like embodying the limitations, and testing and experimenting with those. So, quite literally expanding our bodies.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's some meditation work that will explore the little space of being vulnerable and allowing yourself to and your body to become familiar with that sensation of opening up, so it feels less maybe scary, or you know, just hard to approach, so we'll work on softening as we open, and kind of allowing ourselves to be in that unfolding, as well as bringing in some more like affirmative language, and some tapping. So we'll do some tapping work.
Exciting.
Yeah. I think it's going to be super fun month.
Yeah, and then right on time too, right? I mean, this is yeah, we've come out of our shell that you talked about before, like the blooming, like popping out. That's designed to preserve us, to protect us.
Hmm.
Here we come. We've emerged. We're expanding. We're blooming. We're showing our true colors, even if we're told we're not supposed to have colors. Like we're showing those and really just practicing taking ownership of it. That's really what all this is about. It's not about approval or external validation. It's about us getting more comfortable with who we are. And we often there's a saying that we attract what we project. If we project that we're unworthy, unless somebody tells us we are, that's exactly what we attract.
Hmm.
If we project, I am better than you and I am worthy no matter what, and I will exercise that power over everybody, well, that's what we attract. But if we engage in an ecosystem where we're all life is connected, that's just my personal belief. Like if all life is connected and we all play a role here and there is no better or worse than, well, that's what we attract.
And for a little takeaway for this month, I think for me, my hope is that everyone understands that they can authentically own their presence. If you're a little bit more on the like quiet side, then that doesn't mean you're not expansive. You can really own your space in so many different ways by just allowing you to be you. I know that that is, easier said than done, and there's a lot of practices that we can explore to lean into that and to help kind of shift the narrative. But you're here for only a short amount of time, and I hope that you really understand that there's really no limitations. There are, but if we allow ourselves to really fully be in our presence, it can feel really spacious and it can feel really, really powerful.
Yeah, I'd like to add, if anybody watching this has any questions about what we're talking about, like how do I do this? Here's my experience. Maybe you're not directly connecting with what we're saying, but it's kind of resonating. Feel free to reach out to us, throw a comment on the video or whatever. Um, we it's helpful to hear what people are experiencing and how to there are lots of different practices that can help contextualize what we're talking about.
All right. So I think that wraps up our May talk. We'll be back next month, moving into the summer season. We're really excited to explore that season with you all. And until next time, may you all be so well and take up all the space that you need to flourish this season.